I don't know. It's hard to find words to describe it.
I think Pile and Shite would be high on my shortlist. If they'd both been performing the same play, it'd have been a start.
You get a feeling they didn't quite live up to expectations.
Welcome to episode 15 of the Jonathan Creek podcast, where some might describe this as a big pile of poo-poo.
Yes, some might.
In fact, some have.
I'm sure they have. We're being a bit scathing about season 3 so far, aren't we?
Yeah.
There's a reason for it.
There is. I think this week's episode might divide people. It might divide us.
It might do.
I've divided myself. I think I should dislike it, and there's many reasons why, but I think I quite enjoy it.
I enjoy it. We might get back into this later. My feeling is that all 3 of the season 3 episodes so far would have been fine as an episode in an otherwise more serious season. But when every episode of the season is a little bit out there, shall we say, or deals with the devil, predictive dreams, aliens, it's like, have they run out of ideas to do?
Yeah, it's another non-murder episode.
Yeah. Unless you consider the alien as being murdered, which would be wrong.
Would be entirely wrong.
Yeah.
We should also say we're recording in a different environment this week, so I hope it's not too echoey or...
Well, it won't be thanks to our masterful editor.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of reminiscent of when we did the Columbo podcast back in the day, the first few episodes of that.
Yeah.
It's anyone who tuned into that show, we're in a similar environment to those episodes.
Mm-hmm. Different mics, however.
They are, yes. We had the fancy long-armed ones, didn't we?
Very technical.
Yes.
Shall we begin?
Okay.
Do you have a summary?
As always.
Crack on.
In The Omega Man, we are introduced to Professor Grauman and an alien skeleton that has come into his possession. When the skeleton vanishes in US military custody, Jonathan is called in to solve the mystery. Washington is keen to tie up all the loose ends, but with Maddie under suspicion, will Jonathan be able to figure out whether the truth is out there or not?
Thank you, Ian. That was out of this world. We begin on the street this week and we see an unimpressed Maddie and Jonathan leave a theatre. We heard that clip at the top of the podcast there. Did you like the wordplay or how the poster...
Well, it's a visual joke, isn't it, with a verbal punchline. It's presented as though they were seeing Steve Martin and Harrison Ford in The Odd Couple. And Maddie suggests that's how the tickets were sold.
Yeah, it wasn't. It was Steve Harrison and Martin Ford.
Yes, you're meant to read vertically rather than horizontally on that poster. It's a good trick.
Nice. Now, as they walk arm in arm down an alley back to Maddie's, a sinister-looking bald fella appears behind them from the shadows.
It is quite creepy. They decide not to join the lengthy queue for a refund. That's why they're heading back.
For a brandy.
Yes, better option.
At her place, Jonathan fixes himself this drink and she explains why her household has now increased by 2.
Yes, she has cats, same as me.
Before she confirms to Jonathan that they still have to appear on a chat show.
Yeah, before she gets to that, she tells him why the kittens are at the flat, or the house, whatever it is she lives in. The animal shelter that her friend runs is being evicted unless they can come up with £65,000, so she's taking in a couple of the kittens for now in case there's any problems.
I think they need to get the band back together for this one.
Yeah.
A Blues Brothers reference.
Okay. That's going to come up later, that's why I mention it. It's not a big point. Did you believe her when she said that? I thought she was just giving an excuse for why she's got herself 2 kittens.
No, I believed her.
Okay.
Tell me about this TV chat show.
Well, Maddie and apparently Jonathan have co-authored, or at least both have their names on this book, Challenging the Impossible.
Mm-hmm.
And Jonathan's worried about appearing on this chat show.
Yes, he plays down his own abilities in front of the camera. Maddie promises that she'll look after him and hold his hand.
We then get a point of view shot from what's clearly common close, as we would call it in Scotland, you know, the corridor of the flats. I thought she'd moved to a house.
Yeah, when Jonathan, I think we discussed this before, I'm not sure if it was on mic, but in the Dance Macabre episode.
Certainly in Dance Macabre, the vicar comes to her door.
Mm-hmm. Front door, ground level.
Yes, and also in the episode where the police grabbed Jonathan, which was the one...
That was Redcap.
Mother Redcap it was. So that was at the end of... So that's at the start and the end of season 2. We established that Maddie's living in a house that entire series.
Mm-hmm.
We're now into season 3 and apparently she's not anymore.
Back in the flat. Yeah, so as you say anyway, we have this POV shot and it's a creepy shadow watching Jonathan leave.
Yes. A letter is then slid under the door to Maddie's flat.
Mm-hmm. She senses that something is up and finds this note, this typed note has been pushed under her door. What is it an invitation for?
Well, the note says, "For the most incredible story of your life, ... meet me at Ford's Warehouse, 8 p.m. tomorrow, and bring a camera." And it's signed by Professor Lance Grauman.
Yeah, we've seen Maddie, again, I think it was a Redcap, where the nudist phones her up and she is happy to meet him alone in to go to an old creepy pub.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is a reference, the name of this character is a reference, because it would have been around about the same time that Philip Pullman's His Dark Materials came out. There's a character called Professor Grumman in that.
Sounds plausible.
It's possible, it might just be a coincidence. Who knows? It is, it's very similar to the nudist invitation, isn't it? It's just a out of the blue invite and Maddie can't resist that sort of thing.
It's the next day, the TV studio, and we find that rather than being a bumbling wreck, Jonathan appears more charismatic than ever and has the crew and presenter enthralled.
Yeah, and this scene, for me, shows quite well that they're struggling to write for Maddie at the moment. I think, and then there's further scenes in this episode that are similar where this character was brilliant. All of season 1, most of season 2, she had her moments. But in this season, it really seems like they don't know what to do with her.
Yeah, 'cause she sits there, she does not appear to be very pleased with the situation. Yeah, she's becoming, I think unlikable might be harsh, but you're not entirely sympathetic towards her.
I mean, I appreciate there may be some physical limitations if she was pregnant, the actress at the time. I don't know what they were, if there were any, but the character can do more than just get upset with Jonathan for being Jonathan.
Yeah, it is becoming far more of the Jonathan Creek show. It's not so much a partnership.
Yeah, it seems like she's kind of fading into the background a little bit. She's becoming a secondary character and not a well-written secondary character. So maybe riding a little bit on the character work that they did with her earlier in the show, so she's still watchable, but there's a lot of bum notes in the way that Maddie is presented in this season for me.
Back in the studio, Maddie's mood is not improved when she notices the large backdrop photo behind them.
She starts acting like a small child.
Yeah.
Really immature.
Because again, it's given prominence
Yeah,
to
she's hidden,
Jonathan.
it's only half of her face behind him.
So she tries to bring the attention back to herself and her book, but has no luck.
Yeah, no, she tries to interrupt and Jonathan just talks over her, which I can understand her being annoyed about.
After the interview, he signs some autographs whilst a disgruntled Maddie tells him about her red-hot lead, but doesn't invite him to join her.
Yeah, we have seen her do this before, this exact thing before, where she's said that she's got something to work on and she's off to do it by herself.
Yeah, I think because she doesn't realise at this point she's going to need the help of Jonathan.
Yeah. But also because she's annoyed at him.
So we're at a warehouse now. This is the meeting point. It's all very deep throat as she arrives and the bald-headed man steps out from the shadows, followed by a female voice that chastises her for being late.
I've noted that it's dark and damp and dank.
It is indeed. She's a Mrs. Farrell.
It does look to me more like under a bridge than a warehouse, though.
Could be,
They drive up. It's outdoors. It's clearly not a warehouse, unless
okay,
it's a warehouse.
It's like an Archie's type thing, maybe underneath a warehousing facility. I don't know.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Anyway, yes.
Yeah, so she's Mrs. Farrell, the professor's confidant.
I think Miss Farrell.
Yeah.
She explains that Grauman's health is not best served hanging around in drafty warehouses, which it doesn't look like. And I'm immediately thinking, you invited her. Mm-hmm. It was you who arranged for this to be here.
Yeah, don't be cheeky.
It's not like you didn't say there's a 5-minute window, show up at 8 and we're leaving if you don't.
Yeah, you're lucky she turned up at all.
Yeah.
A letter slid under your door asking to meet in some dark, dubious place at night.
I don't think they feel lucky. I think, in fact, the professor states explicitly in a moment that he believes his note to her was irresistible. It was the scrawlings of a small child.
Of a madman, yeah. In any case, Maddie soon is given some further insight into why she is there.
I'm not a furtive man by nature, but there are hostile forces closing in upon us, and we must try to keep one step ahead. Your role as a dispassionate observer may yet turn out to be pivotal.
Oh, right. So do you think we might stop talking in codes and get down to what this is all about and who it is exactly I'm talking to?
Professor Grauman is, by common acknowledgement, the world's greatest authority on extraterrestrial phenomena. The integrity of his insights, based on 35 years' fieldwork, is beyond dispute.
A polite way of persuading you, Miss Magellan, that I'm not a crank. And that what you're about to see has been ratified with every means at my disposal as genuine. In short, 3 weeks ago an artifact came into my possession that I have good reason to believe is nothing more nor less than the skeleton of an alien life form.
Would you say that we are the greatest Jonathan Creek podcast in the world by common acknowledgement?
Oh, well, I've measured it with all the means at my disposal, and yes, that is fact.
I've seen nothing to refute it at all.
They're just making up stuff here, aren't they? Yeah. No one would dispute Grauman's nonsense about aliens. Get away.
I should say that we're criticising this, but this was brilliant. I love this scene.
Oh yeah, it was. It was great.
It's TV genius.
Yes, but they're talking nonsense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
I think we'll discuss Farrell in greater detail, but I think that as we go along, she's meant to be looked upon as a sympathetic character, but this is just the start of the attitude, I think, that makes me tend to hate her.
Well, I don't hate her. I feel bad for her. I think she needs medical attention.
Yeah, she certainly does, but
I think she's got serious mental health problems and she should be being treated.
Yeah, but if you...
She hears voices.
Sure, but there must be a lot of people out there who believe this sort of guff.
Well, this is the thing. I suppose the distinction is, does she hear voices and needs help, or is she talking nonsense to fit in with what she thinks the professor wants to hear, or what she thinks he values in her?
Let's chat about that later.
We'll come back to that.
Yeah. Now, at this point, a glass case is lit up, and a now intrigued Maddie walks over to see the skeleton of a stereotypical alien creature.
It's very theatrical.
Yeah.
The note I have is that the alien looks like a prop and not an expensive one.
Yes.
It's the kind of thing you buy in like the Science Museum gift shop.
Yeah. This scene certainly does have the feel of X-Files about it, I would say.
Well, I've got a wee bit of X-Files trivia, so I might as well throw in since you've said X-Files.
Sure.
X-Files was obviously hugely popular this time. It was probably the #1 show in the world, and David Rennick wrote this as an antithesis, the power of reason over believing in something being out there.
Good.
And in fact, there's a specific reference to the X-Files later on.
You can tell us about that when we get to it.
Yeah.
Now, Maddie seems to be quite taken with this whole thing as Grauman convinces her with his apparent scientific proclamations.
The molecular composition is baffling and defies analysis.
Oh, well, fair enough.
If you're using, a magnifying glass and a monocle to try and work out what's going on, that means at its disposal. All I have is this pencil, and it's baffling me. I can't tell what it's made of at the molecular level.
I'm a believer. She steers closer before stating that it has the look of a Millwall supporter that she once dated.
I like that line. She's told that it will burn human flesh like acid if touched.
Where does the professor tell her they found it?
In the at the rim of the Painted Desert near Omega, New Mexico, 2 paleontology students looking for fossils came across it. And he cautions her, he says that under certain stimuli, the cells turned out to be organically regenerative, i.e. it may be alive.
Mm-hmm. And he says that rather than let the government get a hold of this thing, it was passed around and ended up with him. That sounds like nonsense to me.
Yeah, and he believes the FBI will murder and maim to get it back. No, I can buy it. And that story about ending up with him, if it, not so much in 1999, but now there would be these students, if this was real, who found this, would go online and there would be a Reddit subreddit about this sort of thing, and people who know people would try to get it into the hands of Grauman.
Yeah, but that's the opposite of what I think would happen. No, that's right. That's the opposite of what's actually happened here. So no one else knows about it, and he's got it surreptitiously.
Yeah, they've not gone on.
No, but what you're saying is these days, yes, if someone found it, I think you would, it'd be all over the internet already.
Well, this is the thing. So it would depend if they had an interest in this sort of thing.
But even back then, I think most people would go, oh, this could be worth a fortune. I'm not going to pass it on to someone. I'm going to go to the newspapers. I'm going to go to whoever. I'm going to try and make a fortune out of this.
If they believe in Area 51 stories and they think the government's going to seize this.
But they were paleontologists, weren't they? They weren't going looking for aliens at that time.
But they might still have an interest.
Of course, it's all a lot of nonsense anyway.
Yeah, it's all fiction.
Yeah.
Even within the fiction, it's fiction. It's a lie within a lie. Anyhow, yes, he believes the FBI is going to murder and maim to recover this.
And he invites her to take pictures and says that he will supply any copy that's required. Now that's PR nonsense, straight away. You'll tell me what to write, will you?
Yeah. Well, yeah. So then something that he didn't anticipate happens. Maddie has to go back to the car
to get her camera.
Yes, he thought she'd be able to just pull it out and take photographs of this thing.
And as she goes to retrieve it, what happens?
A convoy of American military vehicles. I think US Air Force, it says on there. It's not FBI at all.
All very intimidating.
Yes. And kind of fake looking.
Yeah. And they secure the area.
Yes.
They remove the glass case, but when a soldier touches the creature, he finds his hand has been badly burned. So they put the case back on and put it in the back of a truck as the professor and Farrell shout about the rights of the world to find out.
Yeah, Maddie is taking photographs from near her car and hasn't been spotted, but she very ham-fistedly drops her camera, very clumsy. As she goes to change the film, which I thought was a nice retro touch. Obviously it was contemporary at the time, but yeah, she's changing the film in her camera.
And she's shot at.
Yeah, well, I think it's a warning shot, isn't it?
Sure.
No one's trying to shoot her. But yes, there are shots fired and she is able to get in her car and drive off, so they're obviously not that keen on stopping her.
Yeah, she found it quite easy, although there was a sort of Terminator 2 moment when someone jumps onto the back of her car.
Yeah, that was a bit weird. It's like, are they trying to stop her? Are they not trying? Are they trying to stop her to a point? I don't know. I mean, they could just have shot the tyres in her car, surely.
But unfortunately, she gets away, but is left behind her
foot.
Her foot. Camera roll, or
no, I think that was the new one she was going to put in the camera that she's left behind.
Okay, well, she's left behind the paperwork from when she bought it.
Yes. Yes. So there was a film in the camera, and she was trying to. It was finished, and she was changing it for a new one, and she's dropped the new film and the receipt.
Yes.
From where she bought it.
The chemist.
Yeah. But she's still got her photos. The vehicles at this point, we go back to the warehouse, and the vehicles are moving out towards the military base.
To a compound. We next see the trucks entering this highly secure and foggy military hangar and unloading the crate that contained the alien.
Yeah, I was reminded of a episode of Sledgehammer, another show that we've done a podcast about, when the women in bikinis stepped out to stop the military convoy.
I enjoyed that one.
And they stole the nuclear weapon off them.
However, after unlocking the chains and opening up the crate, what are they shocked to not find?
Yeah, there's no alien.
No, just the glass case. It must be
teleportation.
Yeah.
Well, we've been alerted to the fact it might be alive.
Where are we next?
Well, it's kind of a telephone type scene, so we're in lots of places at once. Jonathan calls Maddie, who is at home with her developed photographs of the alien, such as she was able to get from the other side of the warehouse. But she's very sort of short with him. She confirms the time of the book signing that they're going to that day, but doesn't mention the photograph.
No, her mind is on other things. But Jonathan, he's far more positive about the whole book promotion these days after his
bravura turn on the television. She doesn't really want to engage with him too much, I don't think. She's not happy with him still.
No.
And she's kind of interested in what she's been up to.
I think more than kind of interested. I think she's very interested, and we're at her flat now. We see as you mentioned, the pictures being locked in a drawer just as the phone goes, and it's the professor who tells her that the pictures that she took could be very useful.
Well, he's panicking to a certain extent, I think. We want to find out what his plan is. I don't want to give it all away to anyone who's following along, but it was important to him that she got good photographs, and he's concerned that she maybe didn't, I think, at this point. But yeah, I think she reassures him, doesn't she? Or she at least indicates that she has some good photographs.
Yes, I think she thinks that that's some sort of proof, but he tells her that the military will, of course, deny anything. But she has seen enough to present a case to the public, and the challenge now is to show that they can't be silenced. Although what I would say is that Maddie has proven that she can be silenced. If you remember in the Spearfish episode, they were warned off.
They were. Whether she was also paid off, we don't know, but certainly she was encouraged not to reveal the secrets, and we assume she did not.
Over at the windmill, Jonathan is taken aback to find that his home has now been surrounded by armed soldiers.
It's a nice little reveal, isn't there? He walks across his window and it's empty, and when he passes the window there's a military man outside.
Like something from a horror movie.
Yeah, but not scary.
No. Well,
certainly the Air Force people have come for Jonathan.
Yes, and they're ordering him to go with them for a ride.
Yes, and next we see him in a truck.
Military truck, yeah, sitting in the open-ended back of it. The leader, who is a Captain Frank Candy.
Yes, it's a little bit Good Morning Vietnam, this part.
Yeah. He explains to him that the daughter of a colleague saw him on TV explaining the impossible, and he thought that he would be the man to explain the disappearing alien.
Yes, but everything's classified, and they can only say so much. He wants to make sure Jonathan understands the severity of the situation.
I think they're applying a little bit of pressure.
Yeah.
From the truck, we go to the bookshop for the signing, and Maddie is outside there.
Oh, she's making her way, and she sees her own head in the gutter.
Yes, there's been a cutout of the two of them for promotional purposes. And yes, she's had her head lopped off, and people are now taking pictures alongside Jonathan.
Yes, Janine Butcher, who is standing there with her head in Maddie's place.
Yeah.
Time passes, I think, at this stage, because Maddie's then inside the bookshop and Jonathan hasn't shown up, and nobody cares about her, and nobody wants her to sign the book.
Yes. Again, this didn't, for me, it didn't ring true.
No.
We've got these teenage girls, they're after Harry Styles or the equivalent of the day, which would take that or Boyzone or whoever. No one's, these teenage girls aren't like groupies around some guy who's been on the TV once talking about aliens.
Yeah, no, it would be a very specific niche group. I don't think this was the time when it was quite so popular to be not cool.
Yeah, nerdy geeky stuff wasn't acceptable at all, really.
Well, I wouldn't say it was completely unacceptable, but it was practiced in private or in large convention halls away from the public.
Yeah.
Fortunately, that's no longer the case.
Yeah, but even if you were into that, he's only been on the TV once. He's not some sort of geek star. He's not.
Yeah, you would have to have read a lot of his book or Maddie's books, and then if you've done that, why are you not interested in Maddie?
Yeah.
It's a little bit weird.
Like I say, doesn't ring true.
And I don't think Maddie's behaviour rings true either.
No, well, she's being very tetchy with the ringleader, Trudy.
Yes, that's Janine from EastEnders. His name I don't remember.
Yeah.
No doubt you'll tell me.
I'll tell you at the end. Yes.
Yeah, because she's been a little bit, I would say, neddy, I suppose. Chavvy is the universal term.
Yeah, well, not necessarily universal.
More
UK wide.
Yeah, broad. I don't know. She's annoying.
She
Certainly
is.
Very annoying. And somehow they're both intimidated by the bookstore manager, who kind of simpers over. And Maddie decides to sign this book that Trudy didn't want signed. And she then refuses to buy it because she thinks that her name's been misspelled and storms off.
Yeah. Over to the hangar. Jonathan is checking out the vehicle, doing his thing where he investigates and prods and probes. He's looking at the crate as Candy and other armed soldiers look on. The solution is not apparently very obvious, so Jonathan runs through the things that they do know.
So let's tick them off. It definitely went in. You saw it. There was no possibility of a switch. You were with the crate for the entire journey. And yet when you opened it up back here, this EB, what did you call it?
Extraterrestrial biological entity.
Had either completely vanished.
Or
Sorry? No, that's where it falls down. There is no or.
I tell you, there was something real weird about this thing. Not so much what it looked like, but a feeling to it when you got close up. Like a kind of aura. Sent a chill right down your spine. Hell, I don't know. Maybe if it was still alive, and by some process or other could pass through matter.
If it was anyone other than Professor Grauman.
You heard of this guy before?
Oh, I've heard of him. Most definitely. And he's clever. He's very, very clever.
Well, I'm sorry, I don't buy that. He's that smart, he'd have seen us coming and planned ahead. My guess, it was this woman outside.
Come again?
Took 1 or 2 photographs we're keen to retrieve. I can tell you, once we find this lady, which we will, and bring her back here for questioning, her life's gonna be no merry-go-round.
Why would they be treating Maddie like that? She's someone who has information.
Yep.
You know, why would it be? I suppose the narrative is that they're trying to suppress this being revealed. They know about it and they're hiding it, so perhaps that's why her life would be no merry-go-round. They're not trying to prove the existence or otherwise.
Yeah, no, they're trying to keep it under wraps. But I don't think... I mean, there's kind of a hint there that Jonathan maybe realises it's Maddie, but I don't think he does.
There's no reason why he should.
No, and we find out shortly when it does occur to him.
Mm-hmm. Jonathan then tells Candy that he needs time to think things through. And with a hint of a threat, Candy insists that Jonathan has a minder, a bodyguard, to keep him on track.
Sergeant Krabotnik.
I just call him the big man.
Yeah, it made me think of Krabappel from The Simpsons.
Mm-hmm. And from there we're back onto the street.
Yep, Jonathan is met by these girls who've hung around apparently for hours to see him.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. There's no reality in there at all.
No.
And he is accompanied by the big man who looks about 6'5" and 20 stone.
Yeah, I think more than 20 stone. Maddie is in the bookshop, and Jonathan at this point sees her through the window looking at a book about aliens, and I think it twigs for him at this stage she must be the woman they're looking for.
Why?
Well, because he knows that she was going to a secret appointment that previous evening.
Right.
He knows that an unidentified woman who was out that night is being wanted by these military folk.
Come on. She is in a bookshop waiting for this signing, right?
Yeah.
So it's not as if she's even...
But she's sitting looking specifically at a book about alien life.
Yeah, but she's waiting for him. Maybe she just picked it off there.
Yeah, maybe.
It's quite a stretch to assume that woman
maybe
is Maddie.
Maybe he doesn't conclude that it is Maddie, but it occurs to him that it could be Maddie, and he doesn't want to take Krabotnik anywhere near her.
I suppose, knowing the history of Maddie, she's always getting herself into situations, so...
And these, no matter what they do, they always end up working together on something, so I think he maybe just assumes it must be her, and maybe sort of rolling his eyes into the back of his head as he comes to the conclusion.
So what he does is he tries to distract his new escort and doesn't enter the bookshop.
No, he doesn't, and we see Maddie looking typically I don't think she saw him, but she's...
Oh, she does see him.
Does she see him?
She sees him. Well, he decides to head off for some pizza with these young girls who he's far too very dodgy. And she sees him heading off. So in her mind, he's now the big star and is going off with these groupies.
Yes. Very weird. I think one of them suggests going to her place, doesn't she?
Yes, and he says, no, we'll go for it.
Deeply inappropriate.
Oh, yeah, you don't want to be doing that.
Thankfully, he does not go for that. I mean, he's the one guy at the BBC that time who wasn't into that sort of thing, maybe.
Back at the windmill, he is finding it difficult to concentrate on a solution with this big man staring at him, who won't even let him make some tea.
No, he's going to make the tea himself. That seems a bit weird.
Yep, he tells Jonathan just to keep his head in the books.
Yeah, but I think Jonathan anticipated this response because he's done it on purpose to get a message to Maddie.
Yes, he calls her and ignores her denial of involvement with the Professor
Yes.
before going on to tell her about the disappearance of the alien and his resultant predicament.
Yeah, he decides he needs to see Maddie and gets from her that she's meeting Grauman at 12, and all Jonathan then needs to do is shake Krobotnik.
Yes. He also has a more worrying revelation for her as he tells her that they think that she may be behind the whole thing.
Yeah, that's what gets her to open up about knowing what's going on. When Krobotnik returns with the tea that he was making, Jonathan's not there. And he goes out the window, I think, and spots, is it a rope or a shirt or something hanging down that could have been used to climb, and he sees a truck drive off. So he sprints down to his own vehicle and pursues this truck. We obviously know it can't be Jonathan because he doesn't drive.
No. It was in fact his friend Ron who is being used as a decoy.
Jonathan gives Ron a call while he's driving and gives him directions to get Krobotnik far enough away to allow him to make his way to Grauman's lab, home, whatever it is, home and lab.
I think it's a lab within his large home. And that's where we go next, as we hear the Professor admit that the disappearing alien must be an inconvenience and embarrassment to the Americans, before talking gobbledygook about 4th, 5th and 6th dimensions.
Well, it makes us realise that we're all such three-dimensional thinkers. We can't even conceive of a 6th dimension that this alien can actually access. And it's as if he's disappeared, but he's really just become a higher form of being.
I always think in the 7th dimension.
Do you?
Yeah. As a minimum.
Fair enough. Mm-hmm. That's probably why you're where you are today.
Or where I'll end up.
The impression I got at this stage is that Jonathan is of the view that Grauman's behind the whole thing.
Yeah. He's heard of the reputation of Grauman, so he knows what he's all about.
Yeah, he knows there's no aliens, despite what they was told at the base. He knows that the US military aren't behind the disappearance, although he maybe is a bit curious why they're involved. I think he knows who's responsible for this.
Grauman's wee sidekick, Farrell, she then chips in with even more nonsense, claiming to receive regular communications from other planes.
She's periodically contacted by a spirit consciousness from the Pleiades star group called Sargor.
Aren't we all?
Yes.
And at this point, the Professor pulls out his lunch from the fridge.
Yes, and he boils an egg in the egg that he pulls out in a test tube, doesn't he? Or a beaker.
They then sit down to watch a dodgy video of the two paleontologists uncovering the alien in New Mexico, and a sceptical Jonathan notes how convenient it was for a camcorder to be running at that time.
It's like if anyone watches these reality shows like X Factor or something, there just always happens to be a camera crew at the house of the contestant who's giving a second opportunity just to catch him, getting a call from Simon Cowell to tell him that he's coming back on. It's like, what are the odds that there was a crew there that day to catch that raw emotional moment, the one time it happened?
On the screen, we see one of these paleontologists touching the skull and being burned just like the soldier earlier. Jonathan doesn't seem too convinced, and we see him rewinding the tape.
Yeah, he's wanting to look at something again.
We're in the main part of Grauman's house now. It's a little later. And as Maddie helps Farrell clean up after dinner, the Professor asks Jonathan what he makes of it all.
Let's start with the things we both know as fact. We know as fact the skeleton went into that crate. The crate was sealed and padlocked and closely watched from the moment it left you to the moment it arrived at the base. We know it was fact that when it was opened, the skeleton of the alien was gone. And we both know as fact that was no more the skeleton of an alien than my arse. You see, it's hard for me not to feel, I don't know, a kind of grudging respect for what you do. Bottom line, we're in the same business. We both trick the public. Difference is I don't pretend it's real. You use it. Feed on people's fantasies, superstitions. You know exactly what they want and you give it to them. An alien skeleton. That's a good one. I haven't seen that before. Of course, if anyone besides you gets to examine it, game's up. They'll see it's a fake. So what do? You make it vanish. into thin air from an armoured truck guarded by 6 US soldiers. It's perfect. The Omega Man was not dead, but has achieved a higher level of being, a state of pure spirit. This will be your Roswell. Meal ticket for life.
We see the Professor smirk and doesn't deny Jonathan's claims that we heard in the clip there, but simply says he underestimates man's hunger for meaning and confuses it with proof.
I think Grauman's right to say that people are essentially hungry to find meaning in the universe. It explains a lot of things. It's religion, it's also why folk pursue science. People want to know more. Some people want to find out the truth, and some folk just want something that's comforting to them, or something that they can reconcile with their view of the world.
He then rambles on, disregarding silly things like evidence, and tells Jonathan the truth is not out there, but in one's head, as man can't live with the thought of being alone. And I think, again, that's what you mentioned
that's
there.
the explicit X-Files reference there. So the X-Files was always the truth is out there, and this is Rennick's response, that's not true.
In the kitchen, the little ladies. It's all very
Maddie,
70s.
Maddie's asking Miss Farrell to discuss her conversations with Shergar.
That's a nice line, wasn't it? So they've got to clean up the dishes. The guys go out for brandy.
They can't expect them to get out to the garden with their chains tying them to the sink.
Yeah, the Shergar reference was...
Well, yeah, because she talked about the planet. What was the planet called that she talked about? Sargor, so it's close enough, isn't it?
And apparently she translates these voices that she hears for the Professor, who she claims is utterly unique.
It's like Joseph Smith and his golden plates all over again.
Back out in the garden, Grauman calmly sums up Jonathan's belief that he is nothing more than a conjurer and doesn't necessarily dispute this.
Yeah, and Grauman scoffs at the idea that someone collaborated with him. I think he's moved his focus here from executing this plan to seeing if he's smarter than Jonathan.
Well, that's what I've got here. He does take pleasure in Jonathan not being able to explain how he pulled off the trick.
Yes, I think he at this stage maybe has some concern that Jonathan will figure it out, so he maybe thinks he's undermining that by giving Jonathan a clue. So he's always going to be able to say, you needed a clue to solve this problem.
What is the clue?
Okay, so he talks about being a cold planet within our solar system, within the 9 planets. And that's about outdated. There's only 8 planets in our solar system.
Yeah, Uranus isn't up there.
That's true, and also Pluto is a dwarf.
Yep, and no, Pluto's a dog.
Let's move along swiftly
Chemist.
before Ceres gets upset.
The chemist. It's a quick scene of the bodyguard and a colleague asking the staff member to help ID a lady who buys her camera film from them.
The chemist absolutely should not be giving out that information.
No, not at all.
And also, how would they know?
And the military, the US military has absolutely no
Jurisdiction, yeah. But even if they had this receipt, what they look at their CCTV for the time on the receipt. You can't expect the person to know who was.
No, but even
there.
then, you mean it's not. People weren't buying that every 10 minutes. They might sell a couple of rolls a day. So if you knew, yesterday a woman came in
And bought a couple. Maybe if it was yesterday, maybe.
But how? Even then, how would they? She's handed over cash. How does that help identify who she actually is?
It's a woman with dark hair.
Yeah.
I don't know. In Maddie's car, she and Jonathan are heading back to her place.
Yeah, and she obviously feels sorry for Farrell, who she understands to have a serious problem, whilst Jonathan ponders this clue we heard about, and he's frustrated that he can't work it out.
Yeah, I think he's heading for the train at this stage because he doesn't come into the house, does he?
No, he goes for a walk. I think it's a thinking walk.
Right. Inside the flat, Maddie finds Candy.
And we quickly go to the military base. So she has been apprehended. She's panicking as she sits across the seat from Candy, who is looking through her photographs.
This is a little bit like the time they were taken into custody when Adam's sister was there.
Yes.
What was the episode called? Gallows Gate.
Yep.
Maddie's very unhappy.
And Candy says that he needs to close the case and the Professor will be getting interviewed. However, she is first on the list for a good talking to.
We skip over to Maddie's flat as Jonathan arrives, and I think he takes his coat off. I've written undresses, but I think he just takes his coat off, doesn't he?
Yeah, he might be undressing. It's that night, so she's been pulled out immediately.
Yes, he is.
He's went for his walk and then he's come back to
He's
go
going to
to
sleep on the sofa, isn't he?
Yeah.
The kittens are there, and he pulls out a book on the planets to read.
And we have a, would you call it a eureka moment at this point? He certainly seems to work something out.
Yeah, he's got some sort of an idea going, but he goes to sleep without realising that Maddie's not there.
And he is woken the next morning by Maddie on the phone, telling him she's in trouble.
Well, she calls and speaks to the answer phone because he doesn't answer the phone for once. And yes, she explains what's going on, and we skip over to the prison.
A tired-looking Maddie is locked in a cell when Jonathan arrives and pretends to have heard of her as opposed to know her.
She demands to take the Fifth Amendment at this stage. I think it's the right to silence.
Who knows? Maddie tells him what has happened, but he is more concerned with working out his solar puzzle when he suddenly susses what has been going on and requests another look at the alien remains in the hangar.
I liked his little line. Maddie's concerned that the Americans are going to inject her with a truth drug, and he tells her that it wouldn't stand a chance.
Yeah. We briefly see him in the hangar before we head over to Candy's office again, and he is applying pressure to Maddie, claiming that she stole the alien in order to sell it to the papers.
Yeah, he says that he thinks she's not really stupid, she's just pretending. This ties her in knots.
I like that. However, she pleads her innocence and asks to go home. That was quite pitiful, really.
Well, yeah, I don't understand why Jonathan didn't give her a bit more reassurance when they were together. Obviously, he's not concerned for her. He knows that she'll be fine, but he's not in any way conveyed that to her.
No.
And she's still very emotional as he arrives here and demands $100,000 before he'll give them the answer to what's happened to the alien.
Yeah, well, Jonathan wasn't in the room initially. After she has pleaded to go home, Jonathan enters.
Yeah.
He says, "I know what's happened here, but I want 100k."
Maddie's a bit surprised at this. It's not his usual. I mean, we remember back to Bob Monkhouse episode, the name of which escapes me right now. He was upset with her for thinking about a reward for solving the mystery.
Candy and Jonathan leave, and sometime later, Maddie, who had remained in the office, is awoken by a kick to the table from Candy telling her that she can now go. So Jonathan's obviously done something.
Yeah, the case appears to be wrapped up and Jonathan's there to take her home.
From Candy's, we go to the Professors. They pull up...
What? The Professors?
From Candy's office, we head over to Grauman's house. They pull up to be met by Farrell, who is confused because they weren't expecting them. Yeah,
I think Grauman figures that Jonathan's worked out what went on, and he asks, I think, Maddie to take Farrell away so she doesn't hear what happened.
Yeah, I think Jonathan tells Farrell that they are here to commend the Professor on his trickery.
Yeah, she's confused, and I think Grauman doesn't want her any more upset.
He knows that Jonathan has worked out from the clue, which was a risk, but he wanted to test his powers.
At this stage, they both know what was done, how it was done, and why it was done. Why does Jonathan need to lay it out?
For our benefit.
It's entirely for the viewer's benefit, isn't it? Because Grauman could be saying, yes, I know, yes, yes, I know that, yep, I did it, it was me, I was there, I did this, yes.
I think in fairness, through this episode, there has been a clear respect shown
between
by both
two of them,
parties.
Absolutely. And I think maybe just entertaining Jonathan's notion of spilling the beans here because it's...
Well, I think, that they're both performers, or he knows this is what you do now.
To an extent, I think he also wants to be complimented on how good a plan it was. And for him to accept that, he needs to know that Jonathan got every detail.
Yeah, so Jonathan then goes on to provide the solution, which started out with him understanding that 1 of 9 literally meant the first planet in the solar system, which is...
Mercury.
Indeed. And from this, he understood that the element Mercury was used in the whole trick, and that it has a number of unique properties.
Surely everyone figured that out right at the start.
The first time I seen the alien, I thought Mercury.
Well, when the guy burned his hand on the alien, it was quite obviously Mercury, wasn't it? I think 95% of folk viewing would have probably figured that
Most
out.
third-year chemistry students would have worked that one out.
Yes.
Grauman concedes this, and that he had invested a lot of planning and had help in creating this mercury-based creature from a cast. So Jonathan goes into more detail.
To your average punter, a figure made out of frozen mercury is like nothing they've ever seen on this earth. Better than that, leave it out of the fridge for more than a short while, it can do something quite magical. It can disappear, like an ice cube in the sun. You knew those troops were going to show up. It was probably you who tipped them off. Of course, the case was chilled from underneath. Anyone standing next to it's going to feel a shiver when the top comes off. And at that temperature, anyone who touches it's going to get a nasty burn. But then it's disconnected, locked in a crate. By the time they get it back to base, after a long ride inside a hot truck, the whole thing's safely melted down inside the base of that crater. To all intents and purposes, it's vanished. The only evidence that ever existed, a few photos and that video footage you mocked up using a duplicate skeleton. More than enough, I imagine, to pack them in on your lecture tours around the world. Have I left anything out?
In many ways, the most important thing of all.
The most important thing of all. Do you remember what that was?
He would do anything for love, but not that.
He's only guilty of loving too much
That's-
and too many people.
Listen, we've all been there. We've all had to get some creams from the doctor because of that.
Absolutely. It's worse for some than others.
Indeed.
Inside the house.
Yeah, we see the sad sack Farrell who tells Maddie that the professor saved her life many years ago as he was the only person who understood her gift. She's annoying me.
You say sad sack, it makes me think, I don't know if you've ever watched the cartoon Raggy Dolls.
That's where it comes from. That's why
That's exactly what...
yeah, that's where it all comes. That's where sad sack
Is that where
comes.
sad sack comes from?
Yeah.
I thought that was named after a well-known term.
No,
Really? Is that the origin of sad sack?
I'd have thought so. I mean, it's from the early 80s.
That's good, I like that.
Yeah, I was watching it the other day.
That's a good bit of trivia. It's like it's a good cartoon as well.
That is, yeah.
It's up there with Bertha.
I watched that as well. Try to get the wee man into it. Not that impressed really with his YouTube recordings, VHS recordings.
I was trying to get my wee boy into Gummy Bears, the cartoon from the 80s. That was good, but he didn't go for it.
No.
Back to the main plot. Yeah, it's quite sad, isn't it? She seems emotionally dependent on Grauman, perhaps through his manipulation.
Yeah.
I suspect it might well be good for her to be separated from him, but that's not how this is going to go.
No. She then, Farrell that is, unwittingly, perhaps, applies pressure on Maddie by claiming that if anyone should ever destroy the professor, it would be the end of them both.
Yeah.
And outside, the professor is giving Jonathan the same sort of guilt complex, or trying to.
Yeah, belief is indomitable, he says.
Yeah. And he nods towards Farrell, who is approaching with Maddie.
Yeah, Maddie and Jonathan ultimately decide to walk away.
Yeah, now, it's all very well, but these two are chancers. They're making a fortune off the gullible. She may well be gullible herself, but they're travelling around the world. He's certainly living in a huge mansion. It's not all about belief and looking at the inner self. It's about making cash out of
Tricking
this.
people. It reminded me of Black Canary with the doctor that started this fake operations with the bits of human tissue.
They're con men.
Yeah.
And yeah, the fact is they're making so much money, it leaves a taste in your mouth. If you're living a very frugal lifestyle and not trying to exploit this, then or making money and giving it to some sort of charity or whatever. But yeah, you're taking it, you're spending it, and you're conning people.
I mean, Jonathan probably wasn't persuaded.
Yeah, he was about to argue against Grauman's points and his ramblings.
He was, but Maddie intervenes, and at that point they leave.
Yeah, because she feels sorry for Farrell.
Or she's at least concerned, yeah.
And we're back at her flat. There's an awkwardness.
Yeah, Maddie's definitely still in the mood.
She is. But we find out why.
Yep, he hasn't mentioned this 100,000 he asked for, and she expected him to maybe share it with her, I assume.
Mm-hmm.
But as she leaves...
Firstly, she gets him to confirm that they did indeed cough this up.
Yes. Yeah, and he's about to leave because they think he's fed up with the lack of conversation.
And she has a right go at him.
Yeah, no, absolutely. She's surprised he asked for it, and she's sure he can use it to take out some teenagers in his new Porsche.
Yeah. So this, rather than argue, he leaves, doesn't say anything. And she, I think, locks the door behind him, storms back in, and notices that her cats in a cage are playing with something.
Yeah, they're playing with an envelope which contains a check. That was risky.
Very risky.
Anyone who's had a cat will know that that check was not long for this world.
It is indeed a check. She opens up the envelope and her attitude changes immediately because there's a check for £65,000.
To save the animal shelter, yeah.
Uh-huh. And what does she... I think she shouts out, "You bastard, you complete bastard." Now, I think she's talking about herself there.
You know, I think she's talking about him letting her rant and rave at him when he knew all along that he was doing something very generous.
Okay, well, I think it's got a double meaning then, because I think
could
she
be either
also
one,
appreciates herself that she has jumped to
Yeah,
conclusions.
well, when she's calling him that, it's not in a negative way. It's a kind of, yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah, but still, I do think she's talking about herself. I think she is disappointed that she has misjudged him.
Yes.
And she had those feelings towards him when in fact he was doing something fantastically generous.
I think whether she's referring to herself or referring to him, the meaning is the same.
Yes.
She has misjudged what was going on, and he has let her do that without saying anything.
And it was a nice ending. You know, most of the time we've got a comedy ending. This was more emotional. She had a tear in her eye.
Yep.
And
the animals are saved.
Yep. Jonathan's a good guy.
Everyone's happy.
Yeah, but he's took their 25k or 35k.
Yeah, who knows what's done with that?
Yeah, Maddie should have some of that. So she's got nothing. The cats have got 65k. He's got 35, and she's got sod all.
Well, who knows what will happen with that money?
So there we have it. Like I said at the top of the podcast, there's so much about this that I think I shouldn't like it, but I think I quite enjoyed it.
No, I enjoyed it as well. And like I say, if it had been in the middle of a run of serious murder type locked room ones, I think it'd be even better. It would stand out even more. As it is, it's in the middle of
An
a
odd
struggling
season,
part of the run, and I still think it stands out pretty well. It's certainly better than the two that came before.
Yeah, and I think that was in no small part due to the actor who played Professor Grauman.
Yeah, of course the part wasn't written for him.
Well, if you've got some trivia, we'll get to that. So let's run through what we do know at this moment. The episode was first broadcast on the 11th of December 1999. It was 50 minutes in length, and again, directed by Keith Washington. John Shrapnel played Professor Grauman. He was born in 1942, known for Gladiator, Troy, Notting Hill, Apparitions, Bodyguards, Between the Lines, Vanity Fair, and Good Girl, amongst other works on film. He's also a Shakespearean actor of vast experience. He has trodden the boards. That's a little bit of trivia you might like. His ancestor was General Henry Shrapnel, who invented the exploding cannonball and gave his name to shrapnel.
Comes from? That's brilliant.
Yeah,
I really like that. Given his age and experience, he might well be a contemporary of Patrick Stewart, I'd imagine.
Yes.
I don't know that for a fact.
I think he will be, yeah.
The part of Grauman was originally written for Richard Wilson, who obviously had worked with David Rennick on One Foot in the Grave.
I could see that working.
Yeah, it's similar to maybe what he did in Merlin when he was the old sort of alchemist. But yeah, definitely.
Shrapnel was also the son-in-law of actress Deborah Kerr.
Okay.
Who was from Helensburgh.
Not far.
Not far at all. Farrell was played by Jen Booker, born in 1956. She has appeared in Doctors, Miss Marple, Casualty, Get Back, Don't Wait Up, The Perfect Spy, and First Among Equals. Did you recognise Captain Candy?
He's got one of those faces. He must have been in something.
I was a big fan of his in the 80s as a kid. He's Michael Brandon, born in 1945. He has starred in episodes Captain America. He is the US narrator of Thomas and Friends.
Almost certainly heard that version on YouTube.
He's been in Doctor Who, The Bill, Ally McBeal, and Murder, She Wrote, amongst other things. But most famous in this country for playing Dempsey in Dempsey and Makepeace from the mid-80s. Great show, loved it. Glynis Barber Makepeace. Oh, he in fact is married to her in real life.
Really?
Yes. He's also the ex-boyfriend of Kim Novak and the ex-husband of Lindsay Wagner.
There you go.
Yeah. He was Olivier nominated for his performance in Jerry Springer the Musical.
I've heard that's good, I've not seen it.
Trudy, as you mentioned earlier. Our third was played by Charlie Brooks, born in 1981. She's been in Casualty, Bleak House and The Bill, but certainly most famous for starring in 918 episodes of EastEnders.
So far,
Yep. And also, I think she released one of these fitness DVDs, which at the time was the best-selling fitness video in the country.
There you go.
Any trivia for us?
Yeah, I mean, I've used half of it. The other half, the prison scene with Maddie in the cell, was shot in an actual jail, and an actual prisoner had to be moved out of the cell to accommodate them, and got to meet some of the cast and crew, and apparently was not too upset because his wife was a fan of the show.
You wonder how that could actually happen. You know, you contact
Seems really unlikely,
a prison,
isn't it?
yeah, and you say, "Can we do?" And they say, "No, we're a prison. We can't be doing this." It's Jonathan Creek. You know, it's not. I don't know.
And also, here's a crazed criminal.
Yeah,
Meet the crew. Come along.
it could have built a set. There must be other jails which are disused, or
You would think.
yeah.
But anyway. And the other one is that the production team had some degree of difficulty securing a military base to film on because we were dropping bombs on Serbia.
They say we.
And we, as in NATO.
Okay.
And eventually got permission from RAF Northolt, but they were under heavy guard the whole time they were there.
Episode review.
Okay.
Motive.
Notoriety, fame.
Profit and self-promotion.
Yeah.
Clues. This is, again, one of the reasons why, on paper, it's not a good episode.
Clues to what?
There was only one clue. It was the close to, well, to explain what happened.
So the burning touch.
Yeah, okay, so the burning, yeah, and the
air being cold around it.
Okay, there's three then. You've got the burning, you've got the air being cold, and you've got the professor's own clue about the planets.
Apart from these, what did the Romans ever do? For...
Yeah, but still, they're all the sort of same clue. Once you've identified it's Mercury,
yes.
there's not much else to it.
No, yeah, you know what happened.
Mm-hmm. And the gotcha, I suppose, is just finding the Mercury in the case. That proves his theory.
Yes.
Or proves his...
hypothesis. Yes.
Next time, we've got Ghosts, a Forge.
Ghosts? Come on, another supernatural episode?
Hopefully not. We'll find out.
Maybe it's just a name. Okay, we'll see folk in a couple of weeks.
Well, indeed, that's us.
Okay, cheerio.
Bye-bye.